What up? Welcome to episode 27 of the Dealer Talk podcast. Let's go to the auction. Today, we're going to be talking about the auction, and I'm very, very excited. I've been wanting to do this, cover this topic for a minute. We have a great guest. So just to kind of share a little bit of an insight. So when it comes to production and editing, I do all that myself. And we don't edit conversations, right? So the whole premise here is we get people on and we have a conversation, and whatever comes out, that's what we publish, right? So, you know, I add a little bit of music, I do an intro, and then I do an outtake, if you will, at the end of the show. But that's it. I don't cut and paste and snippet and none of that stuff, right? So before I publish anything, I listen to it multiple times. And I was listening to this episode several times, and again today, right before we get ready to pull the trigger. And I was very, very excited because the guest really goes out of his way, to leave some information that you can use as a dealership to get an advantage, right, when it comes to selling your vehicles at the auction or buying a vehicle, right? So Definitely some insights here. Make sure to take some notes. I think there's going to be some stuff in here that might catch you by surprise. And so you want to make sure to be prepared and take advantage of that. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure to share this episode with a friend or share this podcast with a friend, somebody in the automotive industry that can benefit from this information and they can take it back to their day-to-day, right? And make, that's going to help them improve. It's going to make them better. That's the premise. That's what we're trying to accomplish here with this project. So I really, really appreciate it. It would mean a lot to me if you shared it. I'm not asking you for a subscription. You don't have to like it. Just make sure to bring some awareness to some of your friends and people that you're connected with, so that you can, so that they can benefit from it. Really. All right. So that's all I got. Without further ado, let's go to the episode. Let's check it out. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dealer Talk. Today, we're going to be having the conversation about the auction. Very excited to have this conversation. I think this is one of those topics, Eric, that the listeners can really, really take something with them, which is the whole premise of the show, right?
No,
we're trying to give insights.
Yeah,
so I'm very excited.
I think this is going to be just a fantastic subject, and really looking to add value to kind of a dealership's perspective, and to have this kind of knowledge, this expertise on the show today is a big deal. Let's just jump into it, bro. Let's go.
Well, yes, I want to, but I want to ask you a question before we do that, man.
Okay.
I always like to get your perspectives because you're there, man. You're doing the deal every day. So I think it's great to set it up with your insight and your knowledge. So from the auction perspective, what are you guys currently doing? Do you guys spend a lot of physical time at the auction? Are you guys doing simulcast mostly, given your geographic location? Talk to me a little bit about your guys' process at your store.
Okay, so for our process at our store, our buyer does a lot of physical. He goes down to the auction physically and does a lot of purchasing down there. Although most of it can be done, through the convenience of technology. So, I mean, for us specifically, we go down to the auction in order to purchase.
Right on, man. That's one of the things that we're going to have the conversation on today, but the whole premise for today, for me anyway, kind of where I'm at mentally, is I want to get some takeaways on this deal, because this is a conversation that I have often with the dealers that I'm consulting with on a regular basis. I know there's a lot of frustration around that, especially right now, just because prices seem to be kind of out of whack with what the reality of the industry is. So without further ado, let's get our guest on for today. This person has obviously experience in this arena, which is the reason why he's on the show. And so we're going to definitely make sure that we get some insights from him, some takeaways for you, the audience. So without further ado, our guest for today, Mr. Dimitri Tsilis. Dimitri, what's up, dude?
What's up, boys? How's it going?
Wonderful.
Hey, brother. Great to have you on with us today.
Yes.
Really excited to have this conversation with you. But before we get into it, the first question I always ask the guest is, give us a recap on your background and experience, just for the listeners.
Yeah, so I work for an automotive wholesale auction. So I actually work with dealers, the outside rep, to work with those dealers when it comes to buying and selling of their inventory through the auction itself. So think of it. I've been told I'm, the middleman, which is kind of crazy. But I've also been told that I'm the rep, the auction rep, things of that nature. So I work with my dealers. Doesn't matter if it's franchise, independent, a direct wholesale, internet dealers, things of that nature. They come to me for their buying and selling needs. I also help them when it comes to buying cars properly, how to better understand how to do that. And that comes down to training, that comes down to consulting, that comes down to just better general knowledge for these dealers to help them really, really understand how to buy the right types of wholesale vehicles so they can maximize their margins. And also to kind of look outside the box a little bit too. And I know we'll kind of discuss that a little bit later, what I mean by that. So I just want to make sure that with my dealers that, we have the tools in place to really help them. There's software that's out there. It's not just a whole psychology of, oh, I know this car is going to sell on my lot, and yet the car's sitting here for 120 plus days, and I don't know what's going on with it. And then, of course, it loses value and all things of that nature. So I work with them to help them better understand. So hopefully some of the things today will really kind of help, better, not, these dealers, you got to think outside the box a little bit. You have to change to understand. So as the auction changes, the dealers have to change with the auction as well, so they can help to maximize their margins.
Right on, man. Yeah, love that. So I want to kick things off with having the price conversation, right? Because that's the thing that I hear often is like, wow, man, the auction is, it's crazy. How can you make money on these cars? You're buying them. In a lot of the cases, their pricing is above book value. And I remember this was just a couple of years ago when I worked for Cox Automotive, and I'd have dealers ask for favors as far as, hey, can you look at this car in Viato? Let me know what you think. And man, I felt their pain, man. It's like, dude, yeah, like, why would you even do that? Why is that happening, dude? Like, what's the insight on that?
Well, there's a couple different things happening, and there was even an article on auto remarketing not too long ago that kind of briefly discussed about the tariffs that are incurring right now. We don't know yet, and this is not a political discussion on this podcast by any means, but there's sort of dealers are frustrated because a lot of the sellers that are out there are simply increasing their reserve prices, which obviously in turn increases prices overall. Part of that has to do with, we don't know yet exactly what's going to happen with the tariffs. The other problem too is that a lot of dealers are also simply asking too much money for their cars. They're not taking the time to really do their homework to better understand, hey, there are free tools that are out there that you can even use your phone with to scan a vehicle to know what the market price is of these vehicles, and you have to check your inventory. You have to know your inventory, sometimes even on a daily basis, to know what's the market conditions today versus what they were just a month ago, just from 30 days prior to buying that vehicle. So there's a multitude of kind of different things as well, and also too, it is based off geographical location. So you really have to, when it comes to finding these cars to increase their dealers maximize their margins, they have to think outside the box. They have to go beyond their borders. They have to go beyond Las Vegas. They have to go elsewhere throughout the country when it comes to buying and even selling.
So,
and go ahead.
Sorry to interject, dude, but this is that you're touching on something that I've always saw as an advantage or a potential advantage, right? And that's the fact that we have technology today that opens up our market, right? So we don't have to, we're not restricted to our geographic location. And what I mean by that is, I live in Vegas, right? So I don't just need to buy cars in Vegas or California, right? Like I can go anywhere really because of the technology. And so my question on that is, do you think that dealers don't really take advantage of that, right? Could they buy a car that's in different market, like remote from where they would go physically to buy it, and find it at a price that even when you take shipping into account, it's cheaper and it's more, it's just a better buy than it would be to buy that car that's, your physical auction or where you frequent, right? What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. That's 110% correct. Dealers, people don't realize that, we're not restricted just to being in one area where we're based, obviously in Las Vegas. There are dealers who, they buy in California, but of course, California prices could sometimes be even sometimes higher, sometimes barely just a little bit up more than even, let's say, Vegas. But then if they go beyond that, if they actually look for cars, it could be in Texas, it could be in Wyoming, it could be somewhere in the Midwest, and all of a sudden they're finding prices and, like, wow, like how come this car is actually, 1,000 less or 20% less than it was here for the exact same car with even the same similar mileage on that one. So that's where dealers have to really do their homework. They have to really, really search beyond those borders, because in today's wholesale marketplace, yes, dealers, of course, there's plenty of them say, well, I have to touch and feel the car. I have to know, I have to make sure, what's going on. Well, that comes down to, if you find cars out of state, take the time to look at the car, look at the condition of the vehicle, what it's printed online, or anything that's showed online, things of that nature. There's even, most dealers are actually, you'd be surprised, online presence when it comes to buying is that, and Eric, you may want to even ask your dealer this question when it comes to buying, looking online for that matter, because they can contact the other dealership and say, hey, bro, I'm interested in your vehicle. You actually have it for the right price, but I just want to ask you some questions, just to make sure I'm buying it correctly. If you take the time to actually do that, if you take the time to research outside of your borders, not only can you save some money and know exactly more about the car by the time it arrives, that's almost the exact same as if touching and feeling the car, right? Because at the auction, I mean, these dealers, you can't drive the cars themselves. You have to rely on inspections. You have to rely on this. You have to rely on that. In online buying, it's becoming more and more of an upward tick trend than it is physically. So, I'm not going to say that those dealers who are old-minded from way back in the day, using the actual physical black book and things of that nature. No, those days are practically going away. Now it's online. Now it's easier to be able to buy and sell. So the online presence is critical.
I want to ask you this question because this leads right into my question. Okay, so first of all, you'd mentioned that there were free tools available to the dealership in order to evaluate your market. I'd like to get the names of what they are, if you don't mind.
The one that is the number one used is called MMR.
Okay. Any others?
MMR is that one as well. Of course, there's even KBB as well.
Okay.
Those are pretty much the two that are the top.
Okay.
Now, that's in retrospect to the company that I work for. But of course, that's, as for competition, I simply don't know on that one. And then the last one, too, online-wise, it's OVE.com. That's the one that online not only tells you about details on vehicles, but it even tells you the fees associated with that, which the buying and selling fees online is actually even cheaper than it physically is in the lanes.
Okay, so now here's my real question. I mean, thank you for giving that information. And look, I'd be remiss if I didn't add also, your voice sounds fantastic, bro. You have a radio voice. Okay, big compliments for you. Kudos. That's 3 stars right there. 3 stars. So what is the auction's responsibility when they are disclosing condition of a vehicle? I mean, ultimately, as a dealership, I'm looking at a vehicle going, okay, well, how can I ensure that it's not been a flood damaged vehicle? I mean, what are the, and I can even call up the dealership that's trying to sell the vehicle, but you know what? They might not be of the same complete full disclosure mindset as myself, and they might just want to move the metal, and they're not really going to point out the flaws of the vehicle. So from the aspect of, using technology from afar to view a vehicle, and we're making a purchase decision, what is the responsibility of the auction site, and how can, how do they obviously, how do they protect against that in your view?
The 2 easiest way to check, first, is that the auction will have what's called a condition report that's completed on the vehicle. And the condition report is graded between a 1 and a 5. 5 being the best, 1 being not so great. But by doing so, you can actually research the condition of the vehicle. They will check for, more of, they will check for what is going on with the vehicle. What does it look? I mean, what sort of damage on these vehicles? And second is auto check. Auto check on OVE, especially for those types of vehicles. Once a condition report has been completed, it's free of charge. So you can actually see, hey, was the vehicle, it's a quick check. You can check to see if the vehicle was in an accident. Does it have a title issue? Those small general things can better help the dealer find the vehicle. So where the auction comes into play, we also rely on dealers, the sellers, to make sure that they are disclosing their vehicles properly. Do not, if a vehicle's flooded, but yet it runs, and then they try to announce it as a guaranteed vehicle, well, there's going to be a big problem when it comes to arbitration, and that's the A word that nobody likes in this business, right? We all hate that word. So, I've met with and spoke to those who work in arbitration, and a lot of them, you'd be surprised, dealers,
Right.
You hate arbitration, but the dealers do not take the time. You'd be surprised. I have been told many, many, many times from arbitration, have the dealer call us if they find a vehicle at the auction, even in a different state, that they can call the arbitration department at that location, and they can even pull up the vehicle and make sure it's even announced properly. Is this the condition report is a 2, but yet they're marking as a guarantee, and I don't see any caution on this. Can you verify if that's even a legit vehicle? That's any kind of issues. It sounds too good to be true, in my opinion. Well, the good thing is arbitration can actually look into that for you. They can even double check that. And even as a dealer who's selling, you'd be surprised that they're under the NADA at the auction. So if you're trying to increase your overall star, 5-star rating, even on OVE.com alone, towards the bottom left, dealer information, it gives you 5 stars or 4 stars or 3 stars. It gives you a rating. That is your eBay for dealers, is what that is. So think about it for a minute. Are you going to buy something from an online store if it has a 2-star rating, if they have multitude of reviews? Probably not. And what's the reason? It could be something as simple as I've had to arbitrate this car, or arbitration. And a dealer is going, hey, how come I can't sell my cars properly? I don't get it. Well, I think I was announcing it properly. Well, NADA does have a free, it's online, it's public. Anyone can look at this. My neighbor can pull this up. They can see exactly how to announce their vehicles properly. If it's flood damage, hail damage, is it smoking, things of that nature. So going back to just briefly about the homework, not just for buying to increase margins, but even for selling for the dealers as well. And using the tools, the marketplace tools like MMR, to better understand, okay, my vehicle, I can only sell between this range. I can't go any higher than this. And my vehicle's not going to sell. And they're wondering, hey, how come I'm paying fees? My vehicle can't sell. Well, did you look at the value of your vehicle prior to bringing it up here to begin with? Those types of due diligences, with these dealers does help.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. I just I can't even begin to tell you how powerful that is. I appreciate you sharing that. Here's a here's a question for you. In your view, in your opinion, how has the rental fleet inventories affected auctions these days?
Rental fleet, that's a great question. And more rental companies, the big names are out there, they have their own separate lanes, they have their own separate entity when it comes to selling cars directly through the auction, because they constantly have to turn over vehicles. Most rental companies that are out there, because they definitely have the financial backing to really help them, they can even help sell vehicles sometimes even at a slight loss, if need be, for that matter. So a lot of dealers, they'll turn to rental companies to, when it comes to their inventory. But you also have to remember too that some rental companies also have so many of the same vehicles for the mass markets, right? It's not just high-end luxuries. They expect this. I mean, you're not gonna, most rental companies, you're not gonna really find the big ones too. A lot of the times, let's say a Ferrari or a Tesla or something, typically that's a small percentage. They focus primarily on the main masses, the masses of vehicles. But sometimes a lot of dealers, they'll buy from these rental companies, but then they start noticing some patterns. They start noticing that, hey, I keep buying, this Impala or this Ford Fusion or something, or it could be this Tahoe, but I'm not really moving it on my lot. I'm getting it for a great price, but it's not moving. How come? Well, maybe it's because these are not the types of cars you should have at your lot. Maybe you need something else. So, that one can be a little tricky because dealers need to know from these rental companies what is still going to be able to sell on their lot. It's not just, hey, I'm buying 10 Chevy Cruises because I got a great deal on them. Wow, I know I can move these, and all of a sudden they move two, within 60 days. Well, what's going on? And I found it for a great price, but we can't. You don't want to keep them there for too long, also. So maybe it's time to truly, hey, I should bring the rest of them to the auction while I still can to get, a break-even point on my inventory as close to it as possible. So again, rental could be a little. It truly does depend.
Yeah. So that actually leads. And listen, I don't mean to get so broad, but you've been involved in it long enough to know that I just want to throw a generic question out there because I'm fascinated by it. Is that every time my buyer brings back a vehicle that's the same year that we're currently in, or maybe even the year newer, I'm always struck by the, kind of like the 5,000 foot view of, how does that affect the manufacturer from setting rebates and to their own inventory, new inventory for dealerships around the country. So, I think the rental fleet is something that is going to grow, and they're kind of like they're almost setting the margins of profit that the dealerships are allowed to, try and scratch and scrape in. So it's fascinating that as much as new cars have become the concept is almost like a volume based selling. That's changing. It's really kind of adapting to the used car market too. So I'm just hypersensitive to that. What are your thoughts on that?
All of us and a lot of dealers know, especially those franchise stores, the trends happening in today's market is that as manufacturers are getting more involved for those greater rebates, look at GM. GM right now is getting into car sharing services where right now you have companies, Uber, Lyft, you have Turo, whereas individuals, your own vehicle can be used as a rental. Well, all those cars need to be turned in somewhere. And the manufacturers are seeing, GM is slowly, well, not really slowly, but they're definitely sort of that leader right now when it comes to, hey, we're going to be investing millions of dollars into this platform using technology, because as car ownership is actually changing today, there are trends that are out there where even those who, you turn 16, gosh, we were all excited to get a driver's license to finally get behind the wheel. But now today, you're not seeing, that trend is sort of decreasing just slightly when it comes to, teenagers, sometimes even up until the age of 21, where all of a sudden they are now getting into their very, very first car. Well, how are you getting around between, point A to point B? Oh, I was using the car share services, or I was using this, I was using that. So the manufacturers are seeing that, well, if we adapt when it comes to car sharing, instead of not so much car buying, maybe car owning, and using the franchise stores, using, or dealer platform on that one, that will actually help the consumers get into these vehicles, so that can even in turn help these stores, be able to, maximize their overall profits. So in the rental business is that is changing, that is evolving today. So these manufacturers are definitely, they're finding that adaptation on how to, hey, car ownership is changing and we need to adapt to that. And even at my company, they've noticed that. They've noticed those trends. So they're finding these new ways and discovering better opportunities to help dealers that, hey, we can turn your inventory into a car sharing platform. And that is definitely going to be happening. This discussion will be totally different probably 24 months from now. will be a whole different. We're going to definitely see a lot more happening in the car sharing platform and on the wholesale marketplace as online technology keeps growing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm dead set in my thinking of, when they release these volume discounts to rental fleets, and the rental fleets take all those year ahead vehicles and shove them through the auction place. Well, that affects the actual value of the vehicles on the new car lot too. So they have to adjust for that with rebates and whatnot. It's just kind of like I don't know that it's well thought out. Here's my other question, because I believe in this so much. What is your personal thought with dealerships utilizing like third-party sites like a Craigslist or a Letgo or a KSL, or even their own service department to utilize and find those prime vehicles? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my internet dealers, that's what they do, and that's all they do, for that matter, because that's the only way for them to get their visibility out there. You have to utilize every sort of platform you can get your hands on, and a lot of it is through just experimenting. Hey, does Craigslist work for this? Am I a mobile? I had a great conversation not too long ago with an internet dealer where he contracts everything out, including his mechanics, for that matter, and mobile mechanics, because service is so huge in lots. If you have a service bay, especially these franchises, well, what a great opportunity to be able to contract out or have more of a mobile way of reaching your customers. The convenience of being able to actually do that, to help drive more traffic, not just to the store, but to, hey, this store was so cool. They offer this service. They offer that service. They're going to come back to you. They're going to come back to you tenfold, because what a great experience that actually was. And that's what my internet dealer actually does. And by doing so, that I don't have to really worry about a physical bay. I don't have to worry about having the high cost of leasing equipment, things of that nature. Whereas I can keep my margins at bay, for that matter. And, it's a great opportunity to be able to do that. So I'm all for that. By all means, keep encouraging going out there. Utilize every .com platform that you can think of. If one doesn't work, try something else. They're out there. Facebook is incredible today on the marketplace when it comes to car buying and even services.
Yeah, that's good.
Right on, man. So I got a question about aged inventory, right? And it's not so much auction related, but I think your auction experience really lends itself to give some insights. There's a little bit of a shakeup in the market right now because of this whole profit time concept that Viato's pushing. And I won't get into specifics on it because I honestly, I haven't, other than the superficial information that's available online, I don't have a lot of details on what it is or how it works. So I don't want to speak out of term or say anything that's incorrect, but I will say that, Provision is making an adjustment or is thinking about making an adjustment for a reason, right? So whatever the reasoning behind that is, or how they're going to want to accomplish that, that still remains to be seen. But the truth is that there's a lot of inventory that might be sitting at a dealership that has a lot of profit potential. And I think that just because we're in this velocity philosophy, right, where we're trying to turn and burn the inventory as quickly as possible, I think that the industry's gotten to a place where they're leaving a lot of money on the table just to kind of, quote unquote, free some real estate at their dealership to put a car that's going to turn quicker. What are your thoughts on that? What are you seeing from the auction perspective? Are dealerships losing some of those grosses that they could potentially make on a car just because they're trying to move it quickly? Or do you think that, the turn and burn mentality is really the best way to be effective? And how does that impact the auction, right? Because if I take some of those units that maybe have been sitting there for 60, 90 days, but that are a high profit potential units, there's got to be some benefits in there for, from the auction perspective.
Well, of course, we never turn down dealers who, when they bring their vehicles to the auction, we want their vehicles to sell, and we want our buyers to be able to buy these vehicles accordingly. I've worked with a couple of dealers before in the past where they they choose to keep these vehicles a little bit longer on the lot, way past 60, sometimes up to 120 days, because this vehicle actually, wow, the margins are a lot greater. And I have asked that question before in the past of like, why would you want to keep it past, it's way past his birthday, when you could bring it to me and for that matter, just to be able to get rid of it, and you might actually make a tiny bit of money. And I want to be very careful too when I say that, because there's
Yeah, but if it's a high scarcity unit, if it's a high scarcity unit that nobody can find, that car may be sitting there. But when I get the buyer, I'm gonna make the gross, versus me taking it to the auction and taking a hit on it just to move it.
correct.
If the profit potential is there, is my question. This is the bottom line question. If the profit potential is there on that unit today, right, based on the scarcity index, right? The color is right. The trim and model are right. There's not a lot of them in the market. Yes, it may be sitting there for 60 or 90 days. But when I get that buyer, because they're going to find that just because of the scarcity factor, right? When I get that buyer, then I'm going to make that profit. So are we losing those opportunities just because, like you said, oh well, you bring it to me at the auction and I'll make I'll at least turn a profit for you on this car.
We have lost that. We definitely have lost that, and that and I've battled with that a couple times with some dealers before, because there's also, how can I explain this in an easier way? They have this notion that all of my inventory will always sell and always make a greater profit, though. So, and I asked them, then how come you're not, why would you want to turn down any offer? Why would you want to not, try and sell it, directly, when you can make more of that? The only answer I've ever received on that one is, I know I can get the full value for what I'm asking for, that they will not go below the price. I think that comes down to even some general greed, for that matter, as well. But at the auction level, it's like, well, this is what, I could bring you a simple one-page MMR report saying, well, this is what the vehicle is worth right now at the auction. So you can still get something for that. Because remember, this thing will eventually, its margins are, it's just going to be decreasing within the next 30 to 90 days. So why not bring it now, or why not try and sell it now, put it online? And if you're worried about, any potential online fees or anything, it's like, well, our fees are less. It's, you just, if money is there, no matter where it's at, regardless if it's retail or wholesale, do both. Which is going to sell first, and which is going to sell greater, because those vehicles are out there. Those scarcity vehicles are out there. People do want them, and yeah, you can get money for it. But again, this goes back to our little psychology, that dealers, they just believe that, oh, I can, get 10 times more than what it actually is. Well, I do wish you the best of luck if that's the case, but according to the report, according to what the auction is saying, that may not be the case. And even if so,
right. Well, and I think, and I'm sorry to interject, but there's a thought that is in my mind from what you were saying that I want to get out. So I think we're in an interesting, passing of the torch in the automotive industry. And this is what I mean. So somebody that's been doing this deal, right? Like maybe a used car manager or a GM, if he's the one involved in the purchasing and the auction process, that's been doing it for 30, 40 years, even 20 years, right? They have the post technology or post Viato and all these other merchandising and inventory, software. They have that experience prior to that, right? And then obviously what Viato did, it just enhanced their ability to look at data, right? Not just from their small little dealer or area or market, whatever. And now they're able to look at it from a more national level, if you will, or regional, however they're doing that. But newer people, right, younger, this generation that's coming into play, and I was just having this conversation yesterday with a GM. The younger generation that's taking on these roles and it's reliant 100% on those tools is missing a critical piece to this whole puzzle, and that's what's happening in their own stores. Because Viato or any other tool, I don't want to keep saying Viato because there's other alternatives. There's just the
big one.
Yeah. So these tools may tell you that an X car that's, these specifications is the vehicle that you need to buy, and this is the car that it's going to turn quickly, and this is the price that it has to have, and all this stuff. But then you go and you get those cars and they don't sell. And it's because it's too broad of an analysis, right? You still have to take that information, and then you have to be able to understand what's happening physically at your store and see if that assessment makes sense or not. Because if you just rely on the tool, I think that you're setting yourself up to lose money. I think you're being a little bit irresponsible with your role. Excuse me. You know what I mean? And you're actually causing the dealership some profits. When the reality is that you got, yes, the tools should help, but you also have to be aware of what's physically happening. You have to be aware of your physical location. You have to take all these other metrics into consideration. I mean, do you agree with that?
Oh, I do, 100%. And I can tell you both right now that for what I've seen, what I've done in my experience, I see what dealers do right and I see what dealers do wrong. Remember that the average time today for dealerships, from what I've seen and what I've been told and what I've read a little bit too on auto remarketing, is about 24 months. You have 2 years, basically. And in fact, it might be even a little bit less depending on where you are. And those dealers who truly are successful, and I like to reference my internet dealers quite often, and I like to turn to them because remember that their physical presence, it's where their vehicles are only stored at. They have an online presence, right? So I asked them, like, wow, you guys have done so well, and what's your secret? What's going on with that? And they're always saying that we are constantly knowing our inventory, we are constantly knowing where we are, we are constantly looking at our P&L reports, every month to know what's moving and what's not. And to kind of go into briefly what I mentioned earlier is that as the newer used car managers, generations of dealers are coming into right now, as the other older ones are retiring, they're moving forward and things of that nature. The auction itself does have a presence in this because the auction is there to really, really help you. And you can turn to the auction for guidance. You can turn to your reps for help. There, and the tools that are out there, you have to, read and look at your research. Auto remarketing is very, very huge. It's a great source for dealers and used car managers to know exactly what's going on right now in the marketplace. And when they go back in their lot and they're looking, they can realize and understand that, yeah, I can't lose money or else I'm not going to have a job. So, you have to take the time. It's not just buying and selling every single week and you think you know what you're doing. And those who've been doing it for 20, 30 years, they've naturally they had to do it the hard way. They had to truly understand through trial and error what works and what doesn't work for them. And even in today's market, it's easier now to understand it, but the newer dealers don't want to take the time to truly do their homework and better understand how to do it properly. Not better or worse or anything like that. No, they have to know, and by knowing, they'll benefit in the end.
Yeah, that's such a great point. My question is that because I don't know that necessarily. I mean, we're not locked into just four walls of a dealership. We have really, like OVE, for instance, allows us to really just be smarter about how to gain inventory. I mean, we can go to another dealership's website and see what they have, maybe even using vAuto. You can go to another dealership's. You're looking for a specific vehicle. It would fit so nicely into your market. You know that you can maximize a profit from it. Go to OVE, contact the dealership, and say, hey, listen, what would you be willing to sell that vehicle for that's been on your lot for 364 days? What would you be willing to part with it for? I mean, we're just not really, everybody wants to fight the technology. I mean, let's embrace what we have. Let's really, take advantage of what we have and maximize the prime stuff that really moves for the most profit at our dealerships. I don't think that is utilized enough. I mean, because I don't want to say it's a science, but it really is. It's a science. So, I mean, What are your takeaways with that? What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, no, it definitely is a science, and that's every day dealers need to be looking at their inventory, looking up online what other inventory is out there. OVE, I always like to say I try to be the foremost expert on OVE when it comes to helping the dealers out, because that's always OVE. It's always free to list cars wholesale on OVE, and OVE will not even allow you to go above typically it's 120% of what the true wholesale value is. That is why we call it wholesale and not retail. There is a difference. There are .com retail sites that are out there to promote the dealerships, to promote your facility. So as dealers are looking at inventory, what they know that they think that they can be able to sell at the greater margins and profits, yes, OVE is definitely there to help. And I always encourage, for the exception of commercial vehicles, I encourage all dealers, franchises, again, independents, internets, you have the ability to make offers online as well through OVE. You can get a text on your phone saying, hey, I just got an offer on my vehicle. But we're talking even before the physical lanes even start at the auction, for that matter. And the cool thing too about OVE, I don't know if we did touch on this or not, just briefly, is that OVE is not restricted to the vehicles being located at the auction. No, OVE is also meant where you can sell direct from your lot itself, no matter where it's at. I've sold vehicles on OVE where cars were 2 hours away from me, online, and it's dealer to dealer. So so if you want to call and battle it out for this vehicle to make the best offer, you can do that. It's not even going through the auction, going through another channel to be able to create the offer. The ability to today at wholesale is that you don't have to always physically go or physically call the auction to try and negotiate that price for what the dealer wants. You have the ability to do it direct, and by doing so, that also still leaves what we like to say is a paper trail behind, because if you go through OVE, if you're due diligent and you do the right thing by going through OVE for that vehicle that you can sell better than your guy down the street, buy it properly, because again, that all comes down to the famous A word, arbitration, in case something does go wrong. And vehicles purchased and sold on OVE still have an arbitration time frame as well. So you still have that little extra, I'm not going to say the word protection, but you still have the ability to arbitrate if need be as well.
Hey, man, right on, dude. Like, this has been amazing. It's such a good discussion. I think there's tons of takeaways here for the decision makers at the dealership. Or if you're just, maybe you're in sales and you're thinking about the next career move. And it's good to have these kinds of insights and just access to this kind of information. Truly appreciate you, man, and being able to come on here and share some of these tips with our audience, dude. It's amazing. So we're getting close to that time, but before we let the listeners know how they can get in touch with you, there's one question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and that question is, where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years and why? But here's the deal. On this one, I kind of want a little bit of a twist on this question because, I want it from the perspective of the auction. So maybe the question is, where do you see the auction, headed into in the next 5 years, the auction process or that side of the business in the next 5 years, and why?
What I have been seeing and what I think is definitely it's occurring today is right now. Actually, it's not just starting. In fact, it's continuing to progress at the auction level. It's we like to try and be that one-stop shop for all dealers and for all of their needs. Briefly, I mentioned about with my internet dealers how they contract everything out. The auction today is even getting into fixing vehicles, basically making them frontline ready, even fully stickered. So not only when you purchase the vehicle, we can definitely help you reduce your overall pack on the back end by getting your vehicles repaired, stickered, and even moved. And that's the other thing too, transportation needs. A dealer today where the auction, is definitely going to be heading is when they do the right thing, they do their homework, they buy the vehicles properly so they can still make a margin. We can take care of everything for them by the time it gets to their lot. This is all done through technology. This is all done through the ease, where by putting it also on their lot as well, everything was already completed for them. And then the other thing too, it's as the auction continues to migrate, as adaptation, we're changing to today. There's more mobility. I mean, there's apps that are actually available that you could be able to scan your vehicle, not just scan it, but even post your vehicles online directly from your lot itself. The auction, as it's evolving and adapting within the next 5, even the next 10 years for that matter, they are going to be utilizing more of a mobility platform that more now than ever to help these dealers out for both buying and selling. So you're definitely going to be seeing a lot more tech, a lot more online presence, just to be able to gain more greater visibility beyond just your regional market. And that is occurring today at the auction. That's what I definitely believe is not just happening within the next 5 years. It's happening today.
Right on, man. Hey, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really, really appreciate it. How can people get in touch with you?
You can definitely send me an email. It's my first name, Dimitri, Dimitri, then my last name, Tsilis @gmail.com.
Right on. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. So if you're trying to get in touch with Dimitri, hit him up. Thanks again, man. I loved having you on the show. I love having this conversation. That's all the time we have for today. And as usual, we'll talk later.
So you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much. Just want to remind everybody to go to the website at dealertalk.biz. Leave us your questions. Give us your feedback. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk later.